My story is about my older brother, who's 7 years older than me. Growing up, he was the golden child, the kind of kid any parent would dream of. But let me tell you, he wasn't nearly as perfect as he seemed. Behind the charm, he was a liar and a manipulator who could wiggle his way out of any mess. My parents, they were so blinded by his charisma, they never questioned a thing he did. I'm 36 now, working as an office clerk at a law firm. It's not the highest paying job, but it's honest work, and I'm endlessly grateful I landed it and built a life for myself. If you knew my backstory, you'd struggle to believe I crawled out of the mess I was in. I come from a prominent family. My great-grandfather was one of the first in our city to manufacture pharmaceuticals. He had a ton of kids and grandkids, so our family is huge. The business is now split into several divisions, run by my dad, my uncles, and a few cousins. My father inherited a medical warehouse that supplies drugs to pharmacies and stores. My brother, the star of this story, became a doctor. Me, I'm basically a nobody in the family's eyes. I don't have a medical degree which they all expected of me. Heck, I don't even have a fancy diploma to match the family legacy. I'm just a college grad who, by some miracle, finished a 3-year program in 5 years. Am I proud of that? Not really. Nope, because I'm not exactly shouting it from the rooftops. Was I dumb? Maybe. Or maybe I was just a loser with zero self-esteem. I'm not making excuses, but my parents played a huge role in nearly derailing my life. From the start, my brother was the golden child. He was the top student in school, racking up medals and trophies for academics and sports. He even helped Dad at the warehouse while still in high school. He was the picture of intelligence and virtue. By the time I was old enough to understand competition, he'd set the bar so high I didn't even try to reach it. I gave up before I started because I knew I'd never measure up. I didn't resent him or feel bitter, at least. I don't think so. As kids, we had a decent relationship, maybe even a good one, but he was always busy with school, work, or friends. Can you imagine what it's like growing up in the shadow of a golden child? Constant comparisons, snide remarks from family, relatives, even teachers, especially since we went to the same school, where he was the star. I was average at best. Unlike my brother, the sports hero, I wasn't athletic enough for the school team, so I became the butt of jokes for being good at nothing. To survive, I fell in with the wrong crowd in high school. With easy access to prescription drugs from Dad's warehouse, I quickly became popular in that group. I stole meds, got caught twice, and my parents came down hard, grounding me and slapping me with the label of thief. I was officially the family's black sheep. Instead of trying to understand what was going on in my head, they just punished me. If they'd paid attention to my mental state, things might have turned out differently. After high school, my parents pushed me to enroll in medical school, but I refused. I knew academics weren't my thing. I chose accounting instead, which drove them nuts. They despised me for picking a lowly profession. In our family, with 11 doctors, not counting nurses and other medical staff, anything below nurse level was a disgrace. My dad refused to pay for my education, so I took out a loan. When I left for college, he told me he'd cover expenses during school, but after that I was on my own to pay off my debts. I said fine, but I wasn't the type to turn insults into motivation. Instead, I hit rock bottom. I knew I'd get nothing from my parents. Even if I somehow inherited something, it'd be scraps. My golden brother would get the lion's share. So I decided to live it up. In college, I fell in with an even worse crowd, got hooked on drugs, and stretched a 3-year program into 5. I didn't even take side jobs to cover tuition. I just screwed myself over, messing around with all kinds of nonsense. After graduating, I had no clue what to do with my life. I drifted in a delusional haze for 6 more months until I got kicked out of the dorms. I tried landing office jobs, but my lousy skills and bad attitude tanked every interview. I lived in a grimy apartment with a friend, until he asked me to leave, then crashed on another buddy's couch. Things got worse when the bank started hounding me to repay my loan. I couldn't even afford a burger. How was I supposed to pay off debt? My dad had long stopped helping, leaving me to fend for myself. I scraped by with odd jobs, barely covering food and rent. I begged the bank for a break, but eventually 2 huge debt collectors showed up, grabbed me by the collar and gave me 15 days to pay up. I was panicking with nowhere to run. I called my mom, begging for help, but she hung up, saying I deserved it. Desperate, I turned to the last person I had any hope for. My brother. By then he was a successful doctor with his own clinic. He said he'd think about it. I explained how urgent it was, and promised to repay him ASAP. I knew they saw me as a lost cause, not someone you'd trust with money. If he'd said no, I would have understood. But what he did was beyond anything I could have imagined. A week later, he called and said he'd found the money. He asked for my bank details, and without thinking, I gave him my account number, PIN, and password. Yeah, stupid? Maybe. Or just desperate. The next day, I got a notification that my account had been funded with 4 times the amount of my loan. Shocked, I called him to ask why he sent so much. He said he'd sold an asset, and the funds went to my account. He'd leave me what I needed and transfer the rest, but he needed full access to my account. Without hesitating, I agreed and handed over all my info. He withdrew the excess, leaving me exactly enough to pay off the loan. I cleared the debt and felt like a weight had lifted, but that relief didn't last. An hour later, my dad called, screaming like a maniac, demanding I get on the next bus home. He accused me of stealing money from the family business account. I was clueless. It never crossed my mind that my brother was behind it, and I was just a convenient scapegoat. When I got home, my dad greeted me with a hard slap across the face, followed by a barrage of criticism and humiliation, pure emotional abuse. They accused me of stealing to pay off my loan. I was floored. They knew I'd been scrambling to cover that debt. My dad had noticed suspicious activity on his account, checked with the bank, and learned the money had gone to my account. He told my brother, who immediately spun a story that I'd stolen it. Worse, he showed them my bank statement to prove I was the thief. I was speechless as he calmly laid out his lie in detail. My entire extended family was there, and I saw disgust in their eyes. I stammered, "Bro, you sent that money to my account." He looked at me like I'd said something insane and denied everything with a straight face. I called the bank to trace where the money went from my account. They said it was transferred to an anonymous private account, no owner details. But the funds from my dad's business account had clearly gone to mine. It clicked. My brother moved money from the family business to my account, then funneled it to his own private account, leaving no trace. That's how far he'd go for his own gain. I pulled him aside and demanded he confess, but he was a master liar and denied it all. My parents backed him up. He was their golden son, after all. Some relatives doubted I'd steal, but they had no reason to defend me. They forced me to repay the money, but I had no idea how. My dad threatened to call the cops and press charges, but my brother stopped him, saying it hurt the family's reputation. Smart move. I thought maybe he felt guilty, but no, it was pure calculation. If the police got involved, they might have uncovered the truth, so he framed it as doing me a favor, saving me from jail, and demanded I disappear from their lives. Even though I was innocent, I felt like a criminal. I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I turned and ran. I still remember that night, stumbling through the streets, crying so hard I could barely see. I ended up sitting on a curb, sobbing like a kid. I wandered for nearly an hour before catching a bus back to my dumpy apartment. That day, I swore I'd never return to my family and would take control of my life. It took me 8 years to build a decent life. It wasn't easy, but anger and hurt pushed me forward. I wanted revenge. I wanted to expose my brother and tear him down, but I also knew I had no power over them. They had all the resources to crush me, while I had nothing, not even money for therapy. I'd almost buried those memories. But a few days ago, something happened that dragged all that pain back to the surface. My brother's wife showed up at my workplace out of the blue. I didn't recognize her at first. I'd blocked all my relatives on social media. Somehow she tracked me down. She came to beg for help, saying my brother was facing jail time for selling illegal drugs. I asked if she knew our history, and she nodded. More than that, she admitted the money he stole years ago funded his underground business making and selling those drugs. Someone snitched, and he shut down the operation months before the cops closed in. But now they'd caught up to him, and his arrest was only a matter of time. I asked why she came to me when they have a whole army of relatives who could help. She said the police had seized all of Dad's warehouses, and were investigating him, suspecting he was in on it with my brother. Their accounts were frozen and the family was steering clear. Nobody wanted to touch that mess or risk getting involved. But why me? Because I work at a law firm and could ask a lawyer to take my brother's case. Serious, they thought I'd help after he set me up, humiliated me, and got me kicked out of the family. She pleaded, begging me to do it for her kids. I coldly told her my family was dead to me and politely asked her to leave. The next day, my mom called, begging me to help, preaching about how families should stick together. I burst into hysterical laughter at her hypocrisy. I asked where their support was all those years they treated me like garbage. She said, "Let's forget the past. Now's the time to stand united." What a hypocrite. I hung up and told her never to call again. But an hour later she called back and left a voicemail. "Stop acting like a child. Be an adult." So, I'm the child now. I wasn't going to help them. But honestly, their downfall didn't bring me any joy. I'd spent months fantasizing about revenge for my humiliation, but now that karma had caught up with them, I felt no satisfaction. Update 1. The response. The reaction to my post blew my mind. You guys were right. My brother got what he deserved, and so did my parents. Call me a devil, but I decided to seize this moment to get even for my humiliation. When my mom called again, begging for help, I said I'd come home to discuss it. When I got there, suddenly everyone was all loving and caring. I cut through the nonsense right away. I'm not here for empty talk. My brother, his wife and their kids, had moved in with my parents since his property was seized pending the investigation. They all pleaded for my help. My brother even cried and tried to hug me, but I pushed him away, signaling him to keep his distance. I said years ago, when I begged for help, nobody came to my rescue. You called me a thief and threw me out. With tears in his eyes, he said he was sorry. I shot back. Your crocodile tears don't move me. You judged me in front of the whole family, so your apology and confession need to happen in front of everyone too. My mom screamed, accusing me of making a spectacle during a tough time. I said, "That's not my problem. If you want my help, this is the deal." Desperate, they started calling relatives, begging them to show up. Most ignored them, some refused to avoid legal trouble. In the end, my mom had to tell them it was about me, that my brother wanted to confess something in front of everyone. A few uncles and aunts showed up, some genuinely concerned, others with popcorn, ready for gossip, but it was enough for the story to spread. My brother admitted to everyone that he stole the money from the family business to start his illegal drug operation and used me as a scapegoat. I asked him, "Why the hell would you do that to your own brother?" He said Dad would never have approved his business idea, and I was vulnerable, so he used me to get what he wanted. With that money, he started his drug production, opened a clinic, bought a house all before he was 30. Everyone praised his work ethic, but it was all built on his betrayal. One uncle, who'd been a bit kinder to me as a kid, said, "I always knew you weren't a thief." He apologized for not helping me back then, but added he was proud I'd climbed out of rock bottom and didn't break. That's how it goes. Everyone wants to be around when you're on the rise. My dad jumped in. "We did what you asked, now you have to help us out of this." I said I could ask someone at my law firm to take the case, but it wouldn't be free. Dad lost it, yelling that if they had money, they'd hire any other lawyer. "Why do we even need you?" I replied. "Good luck then." What did they expect, that I'd pay for a lawyer to save the guy who ruined my life? Dad snapped at my mom. "Linda, don't worry, I'll figure something out. We've wasted too much time hoping for help from this loser. What did we expect from someone who's always been useless?" I fired back, "At least I'm not a criminal." Despite their golden son betraying them, they still clung to him. I warned them, either let him go, or they'd sink with him. Soon after, I left. My work was done. My revenge was complete. I might have even helped my parents out of that mess. But when I saw them still defending my brother, something in me snapped. They disowned and exiled me for the same theft. But when it came to him, suddenly it was different. That's their double standard. Let them live with it. Update 2. Aftermath. After that family meeting, cousins, uncles, and aunts started calling, apologizing for not supporting me back then. I told them it doesn't matter now when I needed help most. Nobody stood by me. From them, I learned my brother was arrested a month ago for manufacturing and selling illegal drugs. He got 8 years in prison, though his lawyer's trying to reduce the sentence. My dad wasn't arrested, since they couldn't prove he was involved in my brother's illegal business. Life's been rough for everyone. First, their warehouse was seized for over 6 months, halting the business entirely. Second, government agencies started scrutinizing my dad, conducting surprise raids and tightening oversight, which caused constant stress and operational issues. Being tied to a criminal investigation always tanks a business's reputation. Nobody wants to deal with a company caught in a scandal. He lost regular clients and suppliers. Some relatives said my parents have aged a decade in the last 6 months. They regret blindly trusting their golden son. But here's the kicker. They still don't think about me or show any remorse for how they treated me. I just said, "It's fine, I don't need them anymore." An uncle close to my dad said my parents are considering selling everything and moving to a secluded place, maybe a small town where nobody knows them. They're ashamed of the judgmental looks from neighbors and relatives. My brother's wife moved in with her parents since she had nowhere else to go after his arrest. I appreciate your perspective on the first story, and I can see where you're coming from. The narrator's reasons for falling into bad crowds and struggling do feel like justifications at times, and it's fair to question why he didn't take more responsibility for his choices. Sure, growing up in his brother's shadow with unsupportive parents was tough, but many people face similar challenges being overlooked or compared, and still push forward. His decision to spiral into drugs and bad company, or to take 5 years to complete a 3-year college program, does suggest a lack of personal accountability. Nobody forced him to make those choices, and he could have at least tried harder to graduate on time or seek help earlier. That said, I empathize with how a toxic family dynamic can erode self-esteem. Constant comparison and being labeled the failure can make it hard to believe in yourself, especially when your parents don't offer emotional support. The narrator's story shows how deeply that neglect shaped his mindset, even if he could have fought harder to rise above it. I agree with you that he had opportunities to take control, like reaching out to his dad or the police to clear his name during the theft accusation. That might have exposed his brother's scheme, though it's also possible it could have backfired, leaving him in a worse spot if no proof was found. As for the brother helping by paying off the loan, I see your point, but the help came with malicious strings attached. The brother used the narrator as a pawn, framing him for theft to cover his own tracks. That's not help, it's manipulation. The fact that the brother stopped their dad from calling the cops wasn't about kindness. It was self-preservation to avoid an investigation that might have exposed him. The narrator's anger and desire for revenge makes sense given the betrayal, but I agree with you that he doesn't seem to find peace in it. His family's double standards, condemning him but excusing his brother, highlight their hypocrisy, and his choice to walk away feels like the healthiest move, even if it's bittersweet. Ultimately, the story is a mix of understandable pain and missed opportunities. The narrator's not blameless, but his family's betrayal, especially his brother's calculated scheme, was a massive blow. It's a reminder that while we can't control how others treat us, we can control how we respond, and the narrator could have responded with more resilience earlier on. Story 2. I can't say I feel satisfied or great about all this, but I'm glad the truth finally came out and justice was served. Up next, we've got another story, but first, share your thoughts on this one in the comments. Now let's dive into story 2. Worked double duty, found out my wife was cheating. I was busting my ass, taking care of our kid, and handling all the housework while my wife came home late every night. One day, I decided to follow her, and found out she was cheating on me. We'd been married for 4 years. We met at a football game. I was there with friends cheering for my team, and she was with her family. During the game, she was trying to take a photo, and I accidentally ended up in the shot. Instead of getting embarrassed, I flashed a goofy grin. She was super sweet about it, and asked where she could send me the picture. It was funny because I expected her to be annoyed that I ruined her shot, but instead, we hit it off. We swapped contact info, followed each other on Facebook, but didn't talk much for a while. Then, out of the blue, she messaged me, and that's how it all started. At first, it was casual questions, but our chats got more personal. I loved her energy. She was so easy to talk to, like we'd known each other forever. After a few weeks, I asked her out, and she said yes. The date went so smoothly that more followed, and soon we were a couple. I fell hard for her. After a rough past relationship, I was scared to open my heart again, so I buried myself in work and kept women at a distance. But with her, it was different. She made me feel safe, confident, and loved. Being with her brought my soul peace. Eventually, we got married. She always wanted a kid, and within our first year of marriage, we had one. She got pregnant 2 months before the wedding. Honestly, I wasn't ready to be a dad so soon, but seeing how happy she was, I went along with it. When our daughter was born, I was over the moon. She lit up my world, and because of her, I worked harder and tried to be the best husband and father I could be. Since I worked from home, most of the time, our daughter was with me a lot. I dropped her off at daycare and picked her up. My wife was a nurse, so her time with our kid was limited to weekends and the rare free evening. On top of that, since I was home, I took on all the housework, cleaning, laundry, sometimes cooking. I didn't just do it for her, I did it for myself too. I like a clean house, and I knew she was exhausted after her shifts. The thought of her coming home to cook, clean, or shop felt ridiculous, so I did everything to make our life easier. We lived happily like that for 3 years. Sure, we had arguments, but they never lasted more than a day. We were great parents to our daughter and did everything to raise her with love. But in our 4th year of marriage, things changed. My wife started coming home later than she was supposed to. For example, if she had a late shift at the hospital, she'd be due back in the evening, but wouldn't show up until the next day. She'd say she was covering for a sick colleague, or picking up an extra shift. At first, I believed her, but it happened too often. It became a pattern, not an exception, and it started tearing our relationship apart. Our daughter missed her mom, and I had to come up with endless excuses for why mommy wasn't home. Around the same time, our intimate life tanked. She stopped letting me near her, and if I tried anything, she'd blame it on being tired or not in the mood. This went on for weeks, then months. I started worrying about our marriage, and even signed us up for couples therapy, but she never showed up to a single session. Things kept getting worse, so I talked to a close friend. He suggested she might be cheating, or just burned out from the marriage. That sounded absurd to me. I trusted my wife completely. We'd been through so much together. I couldn't imagine her betraying me. To prove my confidence, I even bet my friend she'd never cheat. I genuinely believed she was just working hard for our future. Another possible reason, maybe she was tired of the relationship. I tried talking to her about it, but she brushed me off every time. Eventually, I had to admit my friend might be right. I noticed changes in her over those months. For instance, she used to go grocery shopping in casual clothes, but now she'd carefully pick outfits, put on makeup, and layer perfumes just to run to the store. I didn't suspect anything at first because I'd complained before that she didn't care about her appearance. Honestly, she used to look like she couldn't care less, so I was happy she was making an effort. But everything changed one evening. She was playing with our daughter in the living room while I was cooking dinner in the kitchen. Her phone rang, and instead of answering in the living room like she usually did, she stepped outside. That's when I knew something was off. In 2 years of dating and 4 years of marriage, she'd never gone outside to take a call. Out of curiosity, I left the cooking and followed her. I didn't step outside, but she'd left the door cracked, and I overheard most of her conversation. Before she came back, I rushed back to the kitchen. She returned, acting like nothing happened, played with our daughter a bit more, then asked what groceries we needed. I gave her the list, and she wrote it down. Then she said she'd go shopping, but I already knew something was wrong. She went to our room, showered, changed, and even put on light makeup, just to go to the store. We hadn't been intimate or even talked like we used to in months, yet here she was, all dolled up and happy to run errands. As soon as she left, I asked my neighbor if his teenage daughter could watch our kid for a bit. He agreed, and I felt a wave of relief. Without overthinking, I jumped in my car and drove to the same store. I knew that's where she was headed. When I got there, I waited in the car for a bit. Just as I was about to get out to check if she was actually shopping, I saw her. She was leaving the store with another man, holding his waist, while he had his arm around her shoulders. It was dark outside, but the store was fully lit, and I could see them clearly through the windows. Before they even stepped outside, I stormed in. I was boiling with rage. I still can't believe I acted like that. My wife froze in shock when she saw me. She didn't know what to say or do. I didn't even bother talking to her. Deep down, I knew we were done. I focused on her lover, yelling at him, and causing a scene. People around started recording and taking pictures, but I didn't care. I was furious. Eventually, his boss found out he was cheating on his own wife with mine, and he got fired. My wife came home crying, begging me to forgive her. No matter what she said, I was too heartbroken to consider it. She admitted she thought she could cheat without me noticing, and just go back to our life, like nothing happened. Those words only hurt more. That same night, I kicked her out. She stayed with a friend. Turns out she'd been seeing this guy for over 6 months, while I was clueless, believing her stories about covering shifts at work. All that time, I was home raising our daughter alone. There's no point asking if we got divorced. Of course we did. I couldn't forgive or forget that she cheated while I was trying to be a good husband and father. Thankfully, I won custody of our daughter, largely because her mom was barely around. It made sense for our kid to stay with me. It's been a year, but I still haven't gotten over the pain and disappointment. I was crushed then, and I'm still hurting now, but my daughter is my everything. I'll do whatever it takes to be a great dad and teach her to be loyal to the person she's with. Thanks for sticking with this story to the end. Drop your thoughts on both stories in the comments. Check out our previous videos linked here, and take care.